Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Pam and Paige's monthly webinar. Our topic today is tips for communicating with a person with dementia. So we want to thank you for joining us today. I work for Kelch Communities. I put my information into the chat for you there. And Pam Ostrowski, my co-host, is here, and we have her information towards the end of the slide as well. So we're very thankful that you joined, and we're going to have our next webinar. We'll remind you at the end again, but our next one will be October 24th, topic to be determined. So thank you for joining.
Absolutely. And I'm Pam Ostrowski. I am the founder of Alzheimer's Family Consulting. I am also a dementia care coach. In other words, I sit down and work with you one-on-one. I don't know how many of you got a chance to watch the video that was in the waiting room, but that's pretty much what I do. This is a very, very difficult journey. And I am here because I lived a 14-year Alzheimer's journey with my mom and a 2-year, 3-year journey with my dad with vascular dementia. So you start to learn how dementias, different types of dementia basically show up in an individual. And it's really important to understand what you can and can't do. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So why don't we, if you guys are ready, we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. Okay, I'll kick off, and Paige and I are going to tag team, and we're probably going to pop out of the slides so that you can see both of us conversing. But the first thing that we want to make sure everybody understands is, how do we communicate? What is communication? Because a lot of times people think that the normal communication that you have in a work environment or with friends or family members, all of that is communication, but so is folding your arms, and so is turning your head and kind of ignoring or looking down or looking up. It's also, basically writing. So writing, and so we want to look at the different ways that we can communicate. And the first one is visual. And you will, and this is how people actually phrase things. So have you ever said to someone, hey, this is how I feel about this, and they come back and say, oh, I see what you mean. That person is visual. They need to see things. So when we talk about communication, we'll talk about this in a bit, act out what it is you want the person to do. Don't tell them unless they are an auditory or oral communicator, and you will hear from that person. They will say, I hear what you're saying. Or my mother used to always say, are you listening? And so those are people who cue in on being told what to do. The challenge is that with diseases like Alzheimer's or dementias like vascular dementia or Lewy body, it becomes a challenge because they can't process, the brain can't process the instructions that you might be telling them. So you may need to do both visual and oral. And then writing is huge. So if you guys, so most of us are of an age, we'll just be polite, we're of an age where writing things down is really important. And the science behind that is that it is a kinesthetic. So it's using your hands, right? And the connection between the hands and the brain. And then there's also subvocalization, which is that voice in your head. Like when you write down, 480-555-7112, even if you don't say it out loud, your subvocalization is your little voice in your head is actually saying the numbers to you. The even better way to remember something is to actually say it out loud. So when you say that, there's a doctor's appointment at 10 a.m. tomorrow, I need to be ready at 8:30. Okay, so ultimately that's what you want to keep in mind, is that you're going to have to try. And tip number one is the more the merrier. So visual, auditory, read, write, act, do hand puppets, whatever it takes to help a person with dementia be able to understand what you're trying to communicate. Okay, so let's move on to tip number 2, Paige.
Okay. So how do you want your loved one to feel about your interactions? Now, this is a good one. So tip number 2 the one thing those with dementia feel and remember emotions. This is so very true. Everybody, as caregivers, you must change your mindset on how you communicate. And also manage your expectations. Your expectations have to do a 180. Your loved one is changing. They continue to change. So you have to change with them. And for example, my nurse and I went and did a home visit today. And let me give you an example. Went and saw this little lady in assisted living. She is in an assisted living, but not a memory care assisted living. So she's needing to move to memory care. And her dementia is pretty moderate, if not going into the higher stages of late stage. Still ambulating, very sweet. Her sister called her an hour after we visited. Were the nicest ladies. And we made her laugh and smile, and she remembered that. Although during our visit, she asked us about 4 or 5 different times if we had a dog, because she had a little dog there, and we were showing pictures back and forth, but she remembered that. So that's huge. So creating moments of those joyous, happy moments, they're going to remember that through the emotion. So changing your expectations and your interactions, and you want to create those moments of joy and better experience for you both. And those with memory loss, they always remember more than anything else through their emotions. And sometimes they remember when it's a negative too.
I was going to say,
most of the time they do.
Well, and so I've watched family members come in, and just as they're leaving, which is the worst time to do this to them, from visiting mom and dad, either at home or in memory care, it doesn't really matter. It's like, all right, well, we'll see you on Sunday. Well, that's one of the first qualities or capabilities that someone with dementia loses, is their temporal sensitivity. They don't know what day Sunday is. And frankly, if you've ever talked with anybody who's been retired for any period of time, you know, they're like, I don't know what day it is, you know, let me look at my calendar. So with dementia, they have that problem exacerbated. And so this gentleman says, we'll see you Sunday. And the father's like, well, what's Sunday? And, you know, is that tomorrow? And he's like, and the son was, no, it's not. It's Sunday, you know, as if that was going to help, repeating and talking louder. That's not a very compassionate, kind way to deal with somebody. And then he's like, well, is Sunday 2 days from now? It's like, no, Dad, it's Sunday. And then he's like, so we'll see you then. And he walks out. And the poor gentleman was so dejected because his son had yelled at him. He remembers that. He was wrong, like something's wrong with him. And one of the caregivers saw this and scooped him up. He was in a wheelchair and said, you know what? I think you deserve some ice cream. Let's go check out what kind of flavors of ice cream we have. And then she just started chatting with him as she was walking away from the situation, and, you know, being able, but the next time he sees his son's going to wonder why he looks at him angrily or doesn't want to talk to him. It's like, oh, well, Dad's having a mood. And it's like, no, you were a jerk when you left. and you left him in a bad mood, and now you expect him to forget. And so they harbor emotions, I think is one of the best ways to put that. So negative or positive. So keep that in mind. Okay.
All right. This is a big one. Never argue with someone that has dementia, because I will tell you, we're never going to win. And there again, as a caregiver, you have to change your mindset. So they're always right. And that's going to make your life a lot easier as you caregive and while you go through this journey. And never say, you know, well, don't you remember when? And no, that's not right. Remember, Mom? Remember, Dad, or your loved one, your spouse. Do not do those things. It will create a lot of negativity. It's going to create a lot of discomfort emotionally for them, and it's just going to cause a fight.
And remember what we just said. So if you argue with each other, like, why don't you understand what medication to take? And that person with dementia is like, because I don't know, and you're yelling at me, and they become depressed. All right. So then you have to add antidepressants to the whole thing. And it's just a real challenge because it's destroying your relationship. And so you're angry and frustrated because they don't understand, and they're hurt and saddened, or angry and frustrated, depending on which kind of dementia you have. Like Dad had vascular dementia, so he'd get upset with me, be like, why are you like this? And I'm like, well, why are you like this? And
It's this, yes, yeah, yeah.
And that's not the kind of way, when I look back on that, I'm ashamed of myself, because, I loved him dearly, and he knew it. He just knew I had a short fuse. And so, being able to understand that, but, and forgive myself. But, in reality, I wish it had never happened, where I would have been like, hey, I understand that you're feeling frustrated or sad, or you're grieving that mom is not living with you anymore because she needs more care. I mean, he was going through a lot. So my advice on any of these with communication is take a deep breath, let go of the frustration and the anger, get out of the room if you have to, which is fine. Everybody will be fine for 2 seconds while you take a breath, regroup, calm down, and then go back in and say, look, I understand it's frustrating. And, let's see if we can't work on this together. And they may be like, what are you talking about? So it's already gone in their world.
Right. Right.
And here you are stuck in this mire of confusion and overwhelm and frustration.
And that's already passed, for them.
For them,
like,
they live in the moment.
Right. Well, and at the end of the day too, what makes any difference? It's, at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. It might be to you as a caregiver, but to them, it is a big deal if the emotion and the negativity is held with it. So at the end of the day, who cares if they're not right?
Yeah. And in my book, in my book, I say, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? And ultimately it's about let it go. There's nothing that should interfere with this relationship, because at this stage, it's precious. Every moment is precious that you get where that person is feeling lucid and relaxed and okay with themselves. So that brings us to some of the questions that people ask. And just so you guys know, I'm having some internet challenges. And since I'm the host, I noticed some people dropped off and then came back on. Please come back on. It's just that it pauses and it might drop you. So it's not you, it's me. I don't get to say that very often. It's easier to say it's you. Okay, so a question. This person's wife was diagnosed with what we would call mid to late stage dementia. We do not call stages. We don't call out 5 million numbers. They're really, that is irrelevant, because it really is, what can someone do and what do they struggle with? It's not that they can't do it, because, oh, by the way, as Paige and I have said for months on end with our monthly webinars, this is a variable disease. Who you're dealing with this morning will not be the same person you're dealing with this afternoon or tonight. So it's an ever evolving, some days they're going to be great, some days are not going to be great. And so the fact that somebody even has this model out there is very frustrating to me, because it's not the way dementia works, right? So, or Alzheimer's as a disease itself, a type of dementia. He says, so no matter what form of reasoning he tries with her, she won't put the toilet paper into the toilet after it's been used. She puts it on the countertop next to her, next to the toilet. And he said, how can I reverse this? So you can't reverse dementia behavior, but what you can do is help them move beyond that behavior. So think forward, not backward, because they don't go backwards. They don't get better, but we can help them move forward. And so I had a suggestion of, so think about this. All right, everybody picture yourself on a toilet. Now, there's not many webinars where we would say that. Okay, picture yourself on a toilet and then you stand up and you wipe yourself. So let's assume that's the one we're doing. And you have this thing in your hand. The only thing that this person can see is forward. Why would she turn around and put something in the behind her? That wouldn't make sense to somebody with cognitive impairment. So she sets it wherever the nearest flat surface is, which is the countertop. So my first suggestion is block that countertop. You could use a 2x4 if you want, but maybe some pretty things, figurines or soaps or something, so that it's not flat and easy to put something on. Then substitute either a small table so she can put it on there and then he can throw it out, because this is, and we don't know how long this is going to last, by the way, guys. We don't know if it's a week, 2 months, or 2 years. So just be patient and create a new routine that's acceptable for you, and makes it easy on them. So again, she's forward thinking. She's got something in her hand. Why would she turn around? So toilet, you can either use a trash can, or you get a little plastic, you cover it with plastic, or get lots of Lysol wipes, and put a little table right in front of her, somewhere right where she can see it when she stands up. And she'll set it there instead. But think about what we just said. I mean, Paige, do you have any suggestions on that one for toilet papers?
No, I think that was perfect. It really is a matter of out of sight, out of mind. So having something there right there is perfect. And then again, if it doesn't work out, unfortunately, you try something else. And it's a matter of being just, you've got to create different little solutions, and you've got to, find different ways. And sometimes it's a daily change of trying to figure things out. And sometimes these behaviors stay longer, like Pam said. But I think that's a good suggestion. But yeah, out of sight, out of mind. So whatever they can see forward, because also in the brain, their vision is starting to tunnel too, because of the dementia. So
that's another excellent point. See, I knew you would add stuff. The other thing is, another solution would be for him to, because there's a fine line between privacy and a huge mess. And so if you guys are just at home alone, you're living at home, you can leave the door open and be hanging out nearby, because if she can't find the toilet paper someday, she's going to use her hand. All right, just a heads up, we've seen it. It's not pretty. And what happens after that is even worse. So instead, be prepared, put the toilet paper in front of her so she sees it, and monitor, check in pretty regularly to avoid any issues. And then the other thing is to be the one who grabs the trash can and puts it out there, so that when she's done, she'll put it in your special trash can, and you'll have a liner in it and you can just throw that away. But yeah, are these problems that you want to deal with? No. Are they a reality of dementia? Yes. Will they last forever? Probably not. So that I guess is the upside of the disease, is you're going to deal with a lot of different things. You're going to have to get creative. Paige, I love your advice about it's what's in front of them is what they can realize, what hits their reality, what makes them realize, okay, that's my world is right here, what I can see. So good point. All right. So I put a note in the chat at the very beginning about nausea. I can never say this word. It's anosognosia. Anosognosia. That's it. Anosognosia. Everybody say it together. Anosognosia. All right. So let's not use that $1,000 word. Let's just call it
what that was. Yeah.
Because it's so many syllables. So the thought process here is that it's actually the perception. Let me clarify that. It's the non-dementia person, the caregiver's perception that the person is denying their symptoms, that they don't believe they have dementia or any other disease. By the way, it's not exclusive to dementia, but it is a term that basically is about, it's denial. I'm not sick. I don't have issues. I never did that. You're just lying to me, all of that. So, and the question I have here is, about the question is, what are the best ways and timings to communicate with someone with dementia about their condition and about getting care and assessments for it? And if they are in denial about their dementia and have not been formally diagnosed. So there's a lot of information in that question. So Paige, did you want to take that one first, since I fielded the toilet paper one?
Yeah, this one is
I threw the short straw on that one, by the way.
right. Yeah. So this one is very common. Most of the clients and families that I work with, and most everybody, I mean, that has dementia, about 85% of them don't know that they have dementia. They don't understand. Some of them do, and some of them come in and out of understanding that they know something's wrong, or I just can't think of it. What's wrong with me? A lot of that. But there is no reason why we should be forefronting this information to them and making it, a topic of discussion commonly during this process, because they don't understand. You're never going to get them to understand. They will be in denial, and that's part of the condition. That's part of the disease process. So bringing it to their attention in the moment is not a good idea. Now, if they're bringing it up and they understand and they have those moments of, I know something is wrong with me, or I know I forget things, something is going wrong, validate their concerns and talk to them about that. And if you feel comfortable, yes, talk to them about the disease process. But if you're trying to just give it to them and you want them to understand and for that to sink in, that's never going to happen.
Exactly. And
unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and so here's the thing. We won't be able to see you raise your hands, but do it anyway. How many people, if you knew that your mind was slipping, that you were having, like, where did I put my glasses? Or I know that I'm supposed to be doing something, but I don't know what it is. And there's varying degrees of that. But this person's literally standing in a room staring because they have no idea what to do, or they're shutting down. Then would you want to admit that to anyone, especially a spouse and an adult child, telling your child, hey, my brain is slipping, I'm really sorry? Nobody wants to admit and even when you're talking about other elements of your body and your health, nobody really wants to face the music, so to speak. And so don't make them. There is no benefit in having a person with dementia, agree with you, right? That's not a kind, compassionate, empathetic way to communicate with anyone, but especially someone with dementia. And so instead, you come from a place of, okay, we're in this situation. This is a new adventure. This person is evolving. Now, a lot of people think that somehow memory loss is part of communication. And in reality, with Alzheimer's in particular, they're losing temporal capability, processing capability. My mom lost her ability to swallow for a little while. She lost her ability to walk. She couldn't speak for 8 years before she passed. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. This disease is very unique. So I'm not saying that your loved one will be in that situation, but you have to take into account, this is going to be different for me and how I interact with this person. You have to be willing to change how you think and how you process information so you can help them. You've got to be creative. And that's one of the reasons why I talk one-on-one with people. And Paige, I know that you have people coming into memory care all the time and even assisted living and saying, what can I do about this? And we do tons of webinars and seminars at care communities because people want to know, how do I manage this situation? So, it is a tough situation. I would agree with that. One thing else that this person mentions is about being formally diagnosed. So the only reason that you would want to be formally diagnosed is so you can put a pin in it. You have a benchmark. This is when we got diagnosed. And so that means that in general, with most dementias, you have 4 to 8 year life, on average, 4 to 8 year, I'll get it in a second, 4 to 8 year lifespan. All right. But if we had put a pin in mom's situation earlier on, I mean, she had a 14-year journey It was 8 years after diagnosis that she passed. And every day is a long day, I'll tell you. And so diagnosis is more for starting the clock, sort of. It's not any, there's not necessarily a reason to get diagnosed. I would rather you focus on what the person can do and emphasize that, and you pick up the slack on the things they can't do, or ask them to do them with you and show them what to do physically. I'm going to put my shoes on. Here are your shoes. You put yours on too. That's how you communicate with someone with mid-stage dementia. So it's important to understand that it's not the diagnosis, it's understanding what the person can do and then working from there. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? You guys, you're being quiet in the chat.
And just to say, just to kind of go off of Pam, you know, as far as getting diagnosed, it's a lot of people try to really dig down and find out exactly. And again, I mean, it's really not necessary, but what is necessary, I think, is, you know, and if they do get a diagnosis, usually hindsight, if it's later and you've started seeing these things, they've had it way beyond years before the diagnosis. And it's really about managing their condition and managing anxiety, depression, agitation, and being able to have medications to help those symptoms that come along with the disease. So,
yep, absolutely. That's a great point. Okay, so let's get to tip number 4, which is speaking differently. And we kind of started to talk about that in the previous stage here. We do have a comment, Tiffany. My mom is in early stage dementia. She's still living independently, but I'm seeing her making decisions that are not best for her, mainly financially. Any advice on how to approach this? Oh, that's a good one. There's a couple of things that you can do. First of all, make sure that you have a durable power of attorney from the financial side and the legal side of things in place. Also, make sure that you have a durable healthcare or medical power of attorney in place. Because if this person, I had a financial advisor say, the aliens abducted you, they messed with you and they brought you back, but when you came back, you were in a coma. What's everybody supposed to do with you?
right.
Like your bank's money is all locked up. Nobody can make medical decisions because they don't know what to do. You just leave a blazing trail of chaos behind you if you don't have those 2 documents in place. So with early stages, you can set a date. It depends on whether Tiffany or you live near your mom or not, but set a date for, writing out checks. Or here's another idea, take a checkbook that isn't in an active account and let her do whatever she wants, but call the electric company, the gas company, all the places that she pays, and make sure that they know that you're going to be writing the checks. So that's another way to actually make sure that you have protection. And as people get older, they're like, if your mom picks up the phone and she'll give over a credit card number or whatever, it's a very scary experience. So it's really important that you get on this early because she can lose everything she has. Paige, you have some advice on this, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, if you're starting to see some financial concerns, I would, sooner is smarter, get involved. And not that you have to come in and take over, but I mean, just a suggestion, you could say, hey mom, gosh, I haven't had time to do my bills. And you know what, I'm just going to come over and sit at your kitchen table and I got to get my bills done. So maybe you could do yours while I do mine, and let's sit down and do those together. And, because if there's some financial concerns that are going on, that could be a whole nother webinar, is about all the scams that are happening and
fraud.
I mean, people that have been wiped out, and it's really scary. And these scammers are getting really, really good. So I would definitely start stepping in and just, have eyes on what's going on. Definitely.
Okay. And then Michelle, I think she got bounced out and then came back in.
Yeah.
There was a comment in the chat about, don't you need a diagnosis to pay for things? Well, almost, I'm assuming everybody that we're talking about who has dementia is 65 or over, so that's Medicare. And you can't formally diagnose Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, or Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is coming close because you can take a blood test now, but it's still pretty dicey. And then you can, all they're going to do is do either a Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and that abbreviation is MoCA. If you get my book, it's not that simple, Helping Families Navigate the Alzheimer's Journey. It describes all these tests and the scores and everything. And then the other test is the Mini Memory State Exam, MIMSA. And all they're doing is walking through the processing of the different processing centers of the brain and saying, you know, can you follow instructions? Can you count backwards? And Max on here going, you know, DLROW, which is how her mother spelled world when she was being assessed. And that was actually one of the points to the last question was, well, what if they shine in front of the doctors and all the professionals, and it was really funny, Mac, you could appreciate this, because I was like, oh my gosh, it sounds like Mac wrote this, where they seem fine. Perfect. Company comes over and it's like, oh, your mom is doing wonderfully. And it's like, no, really, she's not. And I mean, you look like an idiot, right? Because you're saying there's something wrong with her and everybody else doesn't see it. And that's really frustrating too. But what they do is they actually rise to the occasion. It's as if the adrenaline hits the brain and they become somewhat lucid and normal. And then I'll tell you what, they sleep for 2 days after that show because they're exhausted. So yeah. So then to answer, we're going to go back up to Michelle's question. So yeah, you don't need a formal diagnosis, only because for medication, Medicare will pay for most medications. It depends on what they are and that type of thing. But what's most important—
They'll go off of symptoms too. I mean, they'll go off of symptoms.
But you got to be careful about medications, people, because the medical profession is all about using people with dementia as guinea pigs. And so, you know, it's like, oh, we'll take Namenda and take Aricept. And oh, I watched this commercial for Rexalti. And it's like, my mom, you know, gets upset with me when I come, and they show her coming up behind her mom and grabbing her shoulders, and the mom swats her away. And I'm like, you came up behind her.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Is that a good example of a person acting out? And so anytime there's behaviors, the doctors are like, oh, trazodone, you know, Xanax. I mean, they'll prescribe 9 different antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications just to shut the person down.
Yep.
So the question is that what you want for your loved one? Okay, we got a bunch of questions, so let's get those. Hopefully that's answering some questions there. Okay, Bruce said thank you. So access to a physician. We have had a consult with a GP and are on the waiting list. Your GP won't be able to tell you anything. A neurologist will do a MRI. Ideally, you want a PET scan, but PET scans are really expensive. PET scans are the only possible really close to guarantee as you can get, although not really, diagnostic. It's better than an MRI. A gerontologist is not, you mean a geriatrician. A gerontologist studies aging. So you want a geriatrician for advice unless she expresses a need or has a medical emergency. So what would be the purpose of taking her to the doctor? She doesn't, you know, you can't fix her. So what you've got to do is plan for the journey, which is what
symptom management.
And look at and question everything that and it won't be a GP. Take her to a neurologist, get on that waiting list, forget about everybody else. A geriatrician actually specializes in aging. There's not enough geriatricians in the entire population right now. I think their patient load is like 1 to 700, I believe, or 1,000. It's an incredible ratio that, and fewer people are joining that particular medical profession. Great, right? So don't worry about that. Focus on, you can either go to a geriatrician. That would probably be the kindest, gentlest one to go to. A neurologist is going to say, yeah, you know, yeah, her brain is shrinking. She's got dark spots. She's got dementia. See you in a year. That's how neurologists, that's their bedside manner. That's them being nice. So
Right.
they're not very helpful. And then we have another one where it said, I had a client in a very late stage dementia. At year 12, I was brought in to help the kids communicate with mom and what has been a silent 5 years. Yikes. Exactly. I think we got them all. Okay. Phew. Thanks, guys. It's so good when you
Yes. It's
and
great.
Michael, did you need to, you have your hand raised? Did you have anything you wanted to say? Or are you good? All right, we'll let Michael pontificate. Let's talk about speaking differently. And we've kind of been touching on this. But the key here is speak so they understand you. Not so you understand you, because that's how you're normally used to speaking. And that doesn't work, because if it makes sense to you, it probably doesn't make sense to them. And repeating yourself louder is really not going to help. As a matter of fact, people who have sensitive hearing hate that. So you do not want to be loud and boisterous and jump up and down and get frustrated. My dad used to get pretty upset with my mom. But I think it comes from a frustration of what's happening to you. It's a fear more than anything, because he couldn't do anything about it. So use short phrases. So everybody follow along. First, we're going to go to the bank and we're going to deposit our CD and get some cash out. And then we're going to go to the dry cleaners and pick up your dry cleaning. Then we're going to go to the grocery store and we need to get milk, eggs, and cheese. And then we're going to go to lunch. Now, everybody repeat what I just said. You can't, right?
Not gonna happen.
You remember maybe the bank. We didn't even get
It's best to type out if you're having struggles and you're really frustrated with repeating, because I know a lot of family members get really frustrated with that. Type out a daily schedule.
Yeah, if you have one. And the other thing
you have one, and make it very short and bullet points and easy for them to read.
Just like what you're seeing on this slide, that's the most number of words you should have in each bullet. And that's a great point, is writing it down. But if you say it audibly, and as we mentioned at the beginning of the hour, that in their visual learners, they're going to need to see. And like my mom couldn't read. By the time you get to late stages, the brain is really failing. And so it might not be able to read. I know a lot of people say, oh, my mom still reads. And it's like, have you asked her what's happening on that page? And it's like, well, no. And it's like, have you asked her what the plot of the book is? No. And it's like, so how do you know she's reading? I mean, that's how we test reading, right? So yeah, so nothing complex. Paige, did you want to take the next two?
Sure. So we've got
no, not the slide. The next
gotcha.
bullet items on tip 4.
And you've got to give them time to respond, 20 to 30 seconds, not 5, because they're processing. And their processing capabilities are much slower. So give them time to respond. And it's learning patience. Oh my gosh. Patience. So giving them time to respond, and don't argue and try to correct them. Again, they're right. We know you're right as the caregiver, but again, does it really matter if they know that you're right? It's best to be kind than to be right.
Exactly. That's and the key is like when I gave that example, that was an example of rambling on. In case anybody didn't know. Bruce did respond and said, if his mom needs to go into assisted living on her pension income, there are waiting lists. So let's talk briefly about that. So first of all, it's the nurse at the assisted living community that will be doing the assessment, not a physician. So Paige, can you clarify that
sure. So Bruce, when you need to get mom into an assisted living, once you have selected the assisted living for her, the community, the assisted living has a director of nursing, and that director of nursing will come out and do a home visit, or maybe you plan to take mom for a tour and lunch, and they can do the assessment during the tour and visit. And then that will determine what level of care mom will be needing. And then they'll develop a full care service plan and then make next steps for move-in. And then the physician will fill out admitting paperwork, but the assisted living will be helping guide you through that whole process.
And
Hopefully
the
that
other,
helps.
the flip side of that though is if long-term care insurance may need a diagnosis, that would be the only time I could think of that. And if she's looking at Medicaid, so state aid, in order for you to
Right.
qualify, you've got to go through some paperwork. I highly advise you involving a lawyer to help you through that process. And you should be able to get through it in no more than 6 months. Some people I know are like, oh, it's been a year. And it's like, okay, somebody's taking your money and ripping you off. It should never take, unless you've got a really complicated situation, which is fairly rare these days. But I know people who have gotten approved for Medicaid in 6 to 8 weeks. So depending on who you're working with, and we can help you with resources, but just a clarification, Medicare does not pay for assisted living. It does not pay for professional caregivers, in-home health. It does not pay for any of those things. So private pay anyway.
Yeah. Assisted living is private pay nationwide, period.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. We have several videos on my YouTube channel of these sessions, and they talk about all the costs and what you need to have in place. So if you're just talking about the long-term care insurance, yeah, they probably do need a diagnosis. I'm not 100% sure. And he said, thank you. I'll look into this. I'm not sure if the same standards apply because you're in Canada. Got it.
Yeah. Yep. So that would be different. And I'm not a
tremendously.
Canadian expert. Sorry.
No, we got Americans talking to you. And I'll tell you what, I would, if you would reply back to the email that you sent the question to and let us know, because Paige and I are sponges, and you may not be the only Canadian that comes to one of our webinars in the future. So
that's right.
So
we're glad you're here.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm waiting for him to write back for sure. Okay, let's talk about how to speak differently. We did. I'm glad you're finding it valuable, Bruce and Michelle. So we've talked about getting frustrated because they are going to ask you the same question over and over and over again. So that's something that I've had people ask me, how do you stop them from doing that? Well, it's like, well, why don't you just leave the room? There's an idea. Because they don't know that they asked the question. That's the problem. You don't have any short-term memory. So how do you know you asked the question? You just ask it again, just in case you didn't. And then this person across from you that you keep talking to is sitting there getting angry with you. Well, it's okay for you to get up and walk out of the room and say, I'll be right back. And then either step outside or go someplace else in the house and take a deep breath and go, wow, this is frustrating. And then clearly, if they're asking a question, your response is not clear. So take that as a cue that you're using the wrong words. So repeating the same words is not going to work. So this is a way to exercise your own brain and increase your own brain health by coming up with 10 different ways to say, Johnny is at school and, he plays soccer. And then it's like, he plays with the ball, or he's 12 and, he's big enough. He's as tall as you are. There's lots of different ways to communicate, and we get lazy. Honestly, we get really lazy. Paige, did you want to grab one of these other ones?
Yeah. So this one's a good one. Don't ignore, don't ignore them or not include them when talking to others. No, where was the one? Oh, the no lying. That one. Sorry, I read the wrong one.
That's okay.
Know that they are not lying. So I get this with quite a few families that maybe didn't have the best relationship with their parent. There are relationships that aren't the best. And so maybe, mom, did fib a lot and it was, dramatic and whatever. But now that she has the disease process, it she's not lying about it. So, or they're not faking it. Sometimes I'll get kids and they're like, my mom was like this all her life and she's just lying. She doesn't have anything wrong with her. She just wants attention. Well, so in some circumstances, maybe that in some circumstances and rare occasions, yes. But if the forgetfulness is there and the dementia is there, they're not doing this on purpose. It is literally the dementia. So,
and that's, no, we didn't lose the slides.
Okay.
I just figured we would look at each other for a while and they could look at us.
Yay!
And so one of the things that I witnessed on this next one, which is very easy to do. I'm sorry, Mom, I did this, but so she was in a wheelchair. So she's at a different height. And then the caregivers would talk, about their days or whatever. And, they would talk over Mom's head because she was down here. And so one of the rules is that you get down on their level and you talk as if they're participating. So you make eye contact with them and say, some days are harder than others, right, Mom? And she may not be able to respond, but she's in there. That is so important to remember. They're not disappeared. They didn't become someone new and they don't know you. Not knowing your loved ones is very rare, by the way, and it's usually extremely temporary when it does happen. So believe that they're in there. And how would you like it if somebody put duct tape over your mouth and people started talking about you and you had something to say, but you couldn't say it? And imagine that. I want you to visualize the amount of frustration that must come with struggling to speak and to communicate in words that everybody around you understands. And so that is heartbreaking, you guys. And we need to really up our game, and with our creativity and with our appreciation from where they're at, always sit down in front of your loved one to speak with them. Never stand up and tower over them. That's a very dominating and commanding position to take. And then also, remind them who you are. If it's at late stages, I would always give Mom a kiss and I would whisper in her ear, hi, Mom, it's Pam. And just in case she was having a foggy day. So, that's really important to when you're really focusing on communication. I think it's really important in this webinar. I don't always hear it in other webinars about how compassionate and how emotionally engaged we need to be. They live in the moment. We could learn a lot from them because we don't. We're doing a million different things all at the same time and probably doing most of them poorly because of that. And so that includes caregiving. Like never, where's my phone? Oops, I'll wait till my internet comes back. Hopefully we don't lose everybody when I just saw my internet flash. But keep your phone in your pocketbook or in your pocket someplace or in your car. Don't take it with you unless, I played music on mine because I didn't know the lyrics to songs. So, all right. So we have more to do. So show, don't instruct. I talked about this a little earlier. And this is my phrase: when in doubt, act it out. It's the whole, you take your shoes and you take their shoes and you sit down next to them and you say, put your shoes on, I'm putting my shoes on, and they mimic. Like, Paige, you want to talk about the dining room and how the reason why you have community dining and memory care? Because of mimicking?
So, well, the community dining is what we do is we divide up in our memory care communities. We divide them up into levels of care. So our residents that are able to feed themselves and, still pretty high functioning physically and don't have any problems, they all sit together in one dining room. And then we divide our residents that need more care in another dining room because we staff it a little bit differently. But once we get them in around, 4:30, 4:45. And a lot of times we'll do like a sing along and we get them all in there. And then we start serving, the beverages and we start bringing the food out. And once they all see everybody else eating, it's just like they're in their own dining room. Yeah. And it's one of those, they're going to mimic what is going on, and that will help cue them that, okay. And they're going to, of course, the senses, they smell it, they see it, they're once they put it in their mouth, it tastes good and they're going to continue eating. But a lot of it is social engagement, but yet they're seeing everyone else do it. So it's that visual cue.
Exactly. It's about mimicking and looking at if they're having a bad day and they don't know what the fork and the knife are for. If the person across from them is picking up their fork and eating peas, they're going to pick up their fork and eat peas. And what that does is it enables them to be independent. There's not somebody feeding them, so you can hurry through dinner. Instead, you're allowing them the grace and the dignity to try it themselves by using their sight, which is an important sense for someone with dementia, to cognitively trigger behavior, which is to pick up the fork and do that. So there's science behind it. And the bottom line is that if you're living with that person or you're caring for them and they're not in a community environment, they're probably struggling much more than they need to. Community environments for memory care, people with mid-stage and beyond memory needs, or I hate to call it cognitive impairment needs, actually, they're better off where they get more stimulus and that where the environment is helping them communicate better, and you'll see improvement as well. That being said, as it says here, they're going to have bad days and good days. And so on the bad days, you have a couple choices. You can not hang out with them, right? Because that's an okay thing to do. Just make sure that, like, if they're at home, they should have a caregiver there who's at least there if they have any specific physical needs. But the other thing to do is just sit there and rub their back, hold their hand, put some, do a lotion, put some lotion on them. Or if they're irritated, they don't want to be touched, that's fine too. Just sit and keep them company. And don't look at your phone, and don't work on your phone while you're sitting there, because that's not the same thing. But the interactions will vary from, morning till evening. And so that's really important. I think we talked about tone, earlier when we were talking about, the ability to, talk calmly, to not yell, to just be patient. I mean, that ultimately is the focus here. Did you have anything to add with tone? Have you had any examples of seeing people behave differently based on tone of voice?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen wonderful outcomes by tone, and I've seen really negative outcomes by tone.
Oh, okay.
It is literally all in the delivery. If your body language and your tone is positive and more on the slower, softer side of things, and patient delivery, you're going to have a much happier family member or spouse in front of you versus, like Pam, you said earlier, we're in a very busy life, and we live in a very busy world. And for those of us that are adult caregivers caring for our parents, we're busy, we're working, we're doing a million things at a time, and we're on the phones and everything. Try to really, eliminate all that stuff and put that out, get rid of that type of stuff, and really do a real quick check mindset on yourself and slow down and just remember how you're going to deliver your engagement and your communication with your loved one.
Exactly.
Just that, 10 seconds, just, do that. And I'm telling you, it's invaluable. It really is. So tone is huge, and body language is everything. I mean, it's like, you get a scowl on your face and what are you doing? And otherwise it's like, oh my gosh, Betty, it's so good to see you. And you give them a big hug and you come in for a big hug, and depending on, knowing your people. But it is all in the delivery. It is 100% in the delivery.
You are so 100% spot on. I mean, my mom's doctor was my dad's doctor, and he had a very quiet demeanor. And my dad was a retired lieutenant colonel, and he was boisterous, and his voice carried, and he was very adamant and smart, and kind of owned the world. And he would sit down and being harumphing, and Dr. Cordova would say, well, lieutenant, or actually he called him colonel, because like colonel is virtually a colonel. And so out of respect, he would say, well, colonel, we need to look at this, because, you know, you really are weeping a lot, and, you know, because he had congestive heart failure. And he's like, we need to look into this further. And my dad's like, I don't think there's anything wrong. And it's like, well, you know, I can understand why you would feel that way. But, you know, for my purposes, I would feel better if we, you know, checked you into hospice and kind of looked at things a little bit more closely. Would you be okay with that? So getting buy-in from someone in the earliest stages of dementia is still a thing. Like, you can still do that. So honestly, if you think about it, it doesn't matter if you have dementia or not. You know, I just melted when he would talk, because I tend to be more like my dad. I don't know if you've noticed. And
Oh, I love that. So cute.
yeah, mom, yeah, and her turkey hat. But we all respond better to people talking quietly and more reasonably. So yeah. So let's wrap up with a couple of more things. So the most important thing is that you have moments of joy. And yes, you can have moments of joy. If you focus on the negative and the hard things, that you'll just get more of that, and you'll just feel mired in that. But if you look at, this is mom, she was, this is probably 2 years before she passed away. And this is a turkey hat. And I didn't think she knew that it was a hat. So I set it on her lap. And I went up to the nurse's desk, and I turned to look back to make sure she was okay. And this is the picture I took of her putting the turkey hat on. So they're still in there. She was being silly. And we want to make sure that you understand that they want to be part of your life, that it's important for them to feel that you still love them, because they understand that they're not the same person, that things are broken, and they want to feel loved. So let's get on to the where the rubber hits the road. Communicating can be exhausting. So Paige, talk to us about respite and how important this is.
Oh, yes. So for all of you caregivers out there, I have to tell you, everyone needs help. Pam and I need help.
Support.
You're right. Sorry. We're going to change that word. We're changing that word. So everyone needs support. Everyone needs support. So how are we going to get that? Well, you need to reach out and find out what's in your areas. Kelch communities, we do respite stays in all of our communities. We also do day stay, hourly care. But if you're in an area that is not, you know, if you have something in your area that offers respite care, reach out. You've got to be able to, you know, be able to recharge your battery. Get the support. Know that there's assistance out there to help you. Also, you know, it's like I said, it's recharging your battery, because I mean, I've had spouses, caregivers, unfortunately, have had massive, you know, situations where there's been a fall and they break a hip, or there's been a massive heart attack, and they're caring for their loved one, and then they don't have a plan in place. They don't know what to do. And respite care is a really good idea to do if you are down the road for long-term care, if and when you need it. So you can start that relationship with an assisted living memory care community, because we all need support. I don't care what it is. We all need resources and support. And also a memory cafe. If you have a memory cafe in your area, I help with 2 different memory cafes here in the Arizona, East Valley, Chandler, and Mesa markets. Reach out and look up those information and Pam has a link on the next slide about memory cafes. That's a support group. And it's a support group to where you bring your loved one with you. The one that has dementia, they get to go to an engagement class, while you as the caregiver gets to go into another area for a support group class with a facilitator. So it's kind of a win-win. It's great resources for you. And it also gives your loved one a time to have a nice little fun interaction with an entertainer or a musician, a comedian, and be with people just like them. So
exactly.
Accepting support.
Right. And it comes down to, if you end up with parents and one of them is the primary caregiver, that person has and I've seen it happen, just like what Paige said, where they've had the caregiver has a stroke, they're in the hospital. What's happening at home with the person who has dementia? Like,
That's right.
who are you going to talk to? I mean, if the person has a stroke, they can't talk. They're in, intensive care. So making sure that whoever is the primary caregiver, however that works out, that person can die before the person with dementia. My mom outlived my dad. Now, granted, he was older, but she outlived him by 4 years. So, and she had, probably one of the more symptomatic versions of Alzheimer's. So now if you can't find a memory cafe, so our Canadian friends, you can use the internet to check out the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. They have an activities page. This is for their Alzheimer's Today magazine. You can subscribe for free, and I believe they do ship to Canada. And they have a ton of activities that you can do with your loved one on your computer. And they have a video, several videos and activities and things. So that helps you kind of set your person in front of a place where they can be active. And that's really important as well. So making sure that they're busy, and that could be sorting the laundry, sorting buttons, doing any sort of sorting. And by the way, it's okay to take the finished sorted laundry, go into the other room, dump it out, throw it back in, and hand it back to them and say, okay, next basket. So it's about, and it's a very good brain exercise for them to do matches and color matches and size matches and sock matches. And, people always ask about activities. So something to think about. And then I wanted to make sure you guys know, because I understand this journey very, very well. If you would like to if you have like 1 or 2 questions and you don't want to spend a lot of time with me, I get it. Send me an email at pam@itsnotthatsimple.com, and we'll do a free 30-minute consult about you. Right. So I work with the caregivers. I don't work with the person with dementia, about how do you get through this next week or the next month. How do we look at your emotions and your mindset, and what steps can you take to help you get through some of the fear and the overwhelm and the decision fatigue that comes with a 14-year journey, right? This isn't cancer or a stroke. This is something where the person is degrading slowly, and you don't want to degrade with them. So that's really important. Okay, so I think we're at the end of our hour by about 5 minutes. So hopefully you guys found this very beneficial. Just so that you know, we do have the recording. Takes me a hot minute with everything else going on to get it out to you, but I will. It's usually Tuesdays. Watch your inbox from Alzheimer's Family Consulting from me, and you will get a link to this recording. Please, please, please share this with your family members. Share it with other friends. This is a really important topic. I'm pretty sure everybody that knows somebody in this situation. So let's help as many people as possible. That's what my objective in following through as a career passion. So that's important. So Paige, did you have any closing words?
No, we just thank you so much for joining us, and we love the interaction. So we love that, the questions. And please join us for our next one. It will be, stay tuned, October 24th.
That sounds great. And thank you, Bruce. What an interesting Paige. Did you read what Bruce wrote? He heard about us from the Provincial Alzheimer's Organization. I don't even know what that is.
Oh.
And
Wow.
your coaching and seminar is very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. And that's
thank you very much. Yes.
So,
thank you, Bruce. And thank everybody else for joining.
Absolutely. We appreciate you. And we're onwards and upwards. We're here for you between webinars. And we're also here for you at any time if you ever have any questions. So look at all the little hearts. Here, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.